I received the official divorce documents via email, while deployed in the arid expanse of the desert. 13 years of marriage concluded with a simple PDF attachment. My name is David Miller. I'm 45, a Master Sergeant serving with the 101 1st Airborne Division. I'd been stationed in Helmand Province for 5 months when Sarah, my wife, decided she'd waited long enough. The email's subject line read, "Let's handle this maturely." The message itself was concise, a mere 3 sentences. She'd already initiated the legal proceedings. She'd already depleted our joint bank account. She'd already moved her new partner, a man named Mark, into our home in Tacoma. Acknowledged. That was the extent of it. No arguments, no pleas, no threats. My roommate Johnson sensed something amiss. "Everything all right, David?" he inquired, without looking up from his book. "Yeah," I replied. "Just some family matters back home." He nodded, and the conversation ended. Military personnel understand when to respect someone's privacy. To be honest, I wasn't entirely surprised. 6 months prior to my deployment, subtle shifts had begun. Small changes. Sarah stopped inquiring about my day, started working late at the dental clinic, where she was a receptionist, and began attending the gym 3 times a week, though she never appeared to exert herself. New clothing, new acquaintances I'd never met, new security protocols on her phone. The signs were there. I didn't confront her, didn't resort to monitoring her communications or trailing her. That's not my style. However, I wasn't oblivious either, so I discreetly took precautions. Nothing overly dramatic, just sensible safeguards. I secured vital documents. My birth certificate, marriage certificate, the house deed solely in my name, due to a VA loan, and military benefits paperwork, in a secure storage facility across town. I also transferred my grandfather's heirloom pocket watch and my mother's antique silverware to the same location, items of significant sentimental value. Furthermore, I opened a separate account at a different financial institution and began diverting a portion of my salary there, an amount small enough to avoid detection, yet substantial enough to prevent starting from scratch should things take a turn for the worse. The night before my deployment, she embraced me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her gaze was devoid of emotion, as though she were bidding farewell to a colleague, not a husband embarking on a perilous mission. I should have recognized the signs then, but a sliver of hope remained. Unfortunately, my intuition proved correct. Unbeknownst to her, I had anticipated this scenario, and she failed to comprehend my approach. I don't initiate conflict. However, I do see matters through to their conclusion. I met Sarah at a friend's summer gathering in 2010. I was home on leave between tours, staying with my friend Robert, in Tacoma. She was completing her nursing program, but ultimately chose administrative work at a dental practice. Less stressful, she explained. We married 8 months later. Sarah often claimed pride in my military service, although she never fully grasped it. Her father was a bank executive, her brother a pharmacist. No military background in her family. She frequently questioned when I would pursue real employment, failing to recognize that after 15 years, the Army was my vocation, not merely a temporary job. We purchased our house in 2014, nothing extravagant, but it was our home. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a peaceful neighborhood. My name was the only one on the mortgage due to the VA loan being in my name. But I included her on the deed because that's what married couples do, share possessions. My father succumbed to a heart attack while shoveling snow a year after our wedding. My mother passed 3 years later from lung cancer, despite never having smoked. They left me a modest inheritance. Not a fortune, but sufficient to allow Sarah and me to pay off her student debt and still maintain a financial reserve. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan. Each time I returned, Sarah seemed increasingly distant, increasingly restless, as though acting a part that no longer fit. "I didn't sign up to be a military spouse," she once remarked, after I mentioned the possibility of re-enlisting for another 4 years. "I'm weary of constant solitude." I understood her sentiments. But the Army was the only place I ever felt a genuine sense of belonging. I excelled at my job, and people depended on me. In 2019, the subtle shifts intensified. Sarah became irritated when I called during her social gatherings, started discussing how her friend Jessica had divorced her husband and was thriving, and began commenting on our lack of common interests. I suggested marriage counseling. She insisted we were fine, merely experiencing a temporary rough patch. Then came the late nights at work, the weekend getaways with unfamiliar friends, the new attire, the largely unused gym membership. I should have confronted her directly, But that's not my approach. My father taught me to deliberate before speaking, to be certain before acting. So I observed and prepared, discreetly, because my instincts told me something was brewing. And in this life, one learns to trust their instincts. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was seated in the mess hall when my phone vibrated, a notification from our bank's mobile application. Another withdrawal, $9,200, nearly all that remained. I set down my utensils and accessed the app. Our joint account balance had dwindled to $187. Our savings, $53,000 accumulated over years, had vanished completely, transferred to an unfamiliar account. One of my unit members, Harris, noticed my reaction. "Bad news?" he asked. I secured my phone. "No, just some banking issues." That evening, I contacted our bank from the base's communications center. It transpired that Sarah had been siphoning funds for weeks, initially in small increments, then in larger sums. The significant transfers commenced the day after my deployment. I disconnected the call and stood in the hallway for an extended period, observing the camaraderie around me, the laughter, the phone calls to loved ones. Life continued around me, while mine crumbled. That's when Johnson found me. "Alvarez mentioned you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he remarked.
What's wrong?
I don't typically share personal matters, but Johnson had once extricated me from a perilous situation in Helmand. I trusted him. "My wife drained our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house," I explained. "She sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week." Johnson didn't offer platitudes. "No, I'm sorry. No, that's tough. No, you'll find someone better." He simply asked, "What's your plan?" "Not sure yet," I admitted. He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That night, sleep eluded me. I accessed our home security system, something Sarah likely overlooked given my ability to remotely monitor it. The cameras displayed an unfamiliar truck in our driveway. A man I'd never encountered walking our dog, using my coffee mug, wearing my favorite sweatshirt, and there was Sarah, laughing in the kitchen I'd renovated during my last leave. A shift occurred within me. Not anger precisely, something colder, more resolute. I closed the laptop, retrieved my phone, composed a list, contacted Davis, an Army buddy who'd become a lawyer, reviewed the VA loan terms, contacted my master sergeant regarding emergency leave, reviewed home refinance documents, something Sarah had casually mentioned last year, and checked the security measures on my military pension accounts. "Call me. Secure line only." After the call, I knew precisely what I needed to do. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to issue threats. I didn't even need to confront her. I simply needed to wait, observe, and allow her actions to become her undoing. 2 months later, I returned to American soil. I didn't inform Sarah of my return. Didn't call. Didn't text. I simply checked into a motel in downtown Tacoma, under an alias, and contacted Davis. We met at a diner 10 miles outside of town. "You look terrible," he stated, settling into the booth. "And I feel even worse," I replied. Davis presented me with a file. Everything we discussed, the house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and this. He produced a separate document. "I discovered something intriguing while examining your finances." It was a refinance application bearing my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. Not quite. Someone had attempted to replicate it, but missed crucial details. The middle initial was incorrect, and the stroke pattern wasn't mine. 2 DUIs and a fraud conviction from 2019. I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," Davis replied. "But first you need to decide what you want." I pondered. "I want what is rightfully mine, and I want her to face consequences." Davis smiled. "Then here's our plan." The following day I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was absent, but Sarah's car was in the driveway. I parked a distance away and observed for a while. Considered knocking, confronting her. But that wasn't the plan. Instead, I went to the bank, met with the loan officer who'd processed the refinance, presented my military ID, displayed the genuine signature on my driver's license, and showed him the forged documents. His face paled. "I need to report this immediately." "I understand," I said. "I've already filed a police report." That evening, I received a text from Sarah. "Who have you been speaking with at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I went to the county courthouse, filed paperwork challenging the refinance due to fraud, and registered formal notification that no alterations to the property could be made without my consent. 2 days later, Sarah called. I allowed it to go to voicemail. Nathan, we need to talk. The bank contacted us about the house. What are you doing? If this concerns the divorce, we can discuss it rationally. Rationally? The same words from her email. I still didn't respond. Davis called that afternoon. They've frozen the refinance funds and there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck. The one in your name, right? Yes, he was pulled over this morning, driving with a suspended license due to those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle. Excellent, I said. He also had some interesting items in the truck. Prescription pads from the dental clinic where Sarah works. They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads. It seems so. The police are investigating. I hung up and sat on the motel bed. This was escalating beyond my expectations. A part of me wanted to call Sarah. Warn her. Old habits die hard. But then I recalled the security camera footage. My home, my dog, my life, discarded as though meaningless. This was the path now. I couldn't turn back. And frankly, I didn't want to. I met with the bank's fraud investigator the following morning. His name was Thompson. A short man with weary eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. This happens more frequently than you'd think, he stated, spreading documents across his desk. Spouse deploys. The other spouse seizes an opportunity. What happens now? I inquired. We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance. But there's a complication. Some of the money is already gone. How much? Approximately half. $15,300. I leaned forward. Where did it go? Thompson hesitated. I'm not authorized to disclose that information. It's my house. My signature forged. My money stolen. He nodded slowly. Then rotated his computer screen towards me. These are the transfers from the refinance account. I examined the list. Multiple transfers to an individual named Robert Carter. Not Mark. Someone I'd never heard of. Who's Robert Carter? I asked. Thompson shrugged. Not my area of expertise. But you should request your lawyer to subpoena these records. I contacted Davis. As soon as I left the bank. Robert Carter, he repeated. Let me run a background check. An hour later he called back. Got it. Robert Carter is a real estate broker. Specializes in quick sales. Cash transactions. She was planning to sell our house. I said. The realization struck me like a physical blow. It appears so. The deposits were likely earnest money to initiate a listing. But here's where it gets interesting. Carter has conducted business with Mark Johnson before. Mark Johnson. Is that your wife's boyfriend? Yes. They've closed 4 deals together in the past 2 years. I sat on a park bench, struggling to comprehend this. So this wasn't simply Sarah leaving me for another man. This was what? A premeditated operation. Possibly, Davis responded cautiously. I investigated Mark Johnson. He displayed a pattern. He becomes involved with women undergoing divorce or with deployed spouses. 3 cases I've uncovered thus far. Each time, the woman's home is sold significantly below market value to one of Carter's clients. Johnson receives a share of the proceeds. Then he moves on. And Sarah? Did she know about this? Difficult to say. Perhaps she's a victim as well. Or perhaps she's complicit. I rubbed my face. This wasn't just about Sarah's betrayal anymore. This was something larger. Something calculated. And other military families had fallen victim. What do we do? I asked. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Davis replied. This transcends state lines. Involves military personnel and VA loans. They're interested. That night, I sat in my motel room with a beer, reflecting on everything, questioning whether Sarah had manipulated me throughout our marriage, or had been ensnared in Johnson's scheme, questioning whether it even mattered. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. Nathan, please call me. The bank mentioned something about fraud. And Jeremy was arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed. Who is Robert Carter? 3 dots appeared as she began typing. Then paused. Started again. Paused. Finally. I don't know what you're referring to. 15,300. I wrote. Multiple transfers. House listing. No response for 10 minutes. Nathan, it's not as you think. I switched off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, Davis called. The FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Johnson and Carter for months. You're not the first victim, but you might be the case that breaks it open. For the first time since receiving that divorce email, I felt something akin to satisfaction, not because my marriage had ended, but because the truth was finally emerging. I met with the FBI agents at their Spokane field office, Agent Perez and Agent Rodriguez. They recorded my statement, obtained copies of all the documents Davis and I had gathered. Your case helps establish a pattern, Agent Perez explained. Demonstrates intent, organization, makes it a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents. What about Sarah? I asked. My wife, ex-wife. The agents exchanged glances. We're still assessing her level of involvement. Rodriguez stated cautiously. Did she ever mention financial difficulties? Pressure to sell the house? I reflected. She repeatedly claimed we were financially strained, that we should downsize. I saw no need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary. Perez made a note. When did that start? Approximately 6 months ago. Around the time she likely met Johnson. And the refinance? Rodriguez inquired. Never discussed it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed. They posed more questions, took more notes. When we concluded, Perez handed me her card. We'll keep in touch. In the meantime, avoid confronting your wife or Johnson. We need to build this case meticulously.
I nodded.
Understood. That evening I drove to our neighborhood again, parked down the street from our house. Johnson's truck had returned, presumably released from impound. Sarah's car was gone.
My phone buzzed.
A text from Sarah.
We need to speak in person.
Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. I'll be there, I replied. 30 a.m. parking across the street. At 9:45 a.m. Sarah emerged, entered her car, and drove away, heading towards Riverfront Park.
Now what? Davis asked.
Now we wait, I said. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up. A real estate agent's logo was on the door, Robert Carter. Johnson emerged to greet him. They spoke in the driveway, then entered the house. Should we follow them? Davis asked. I shook my head. No need. I installed security cameras last year, interior and exterior. They upload to cloud storage.
Davis smiled.
You didn't mention that before. It didn't arise, I said, retrieving my phone. I opened the security app and angled the screen so Davis could see. Carter and Johnson were in our living room. Carter was taking photographs. Johnson was pointing out features of the house. I increased the volume. Should list by the end of the week, Carter was saying. I've already got a buyer interested. Cash offer, as usual.
How much?
Johnson asked. $420. We list at $470.
They offer $420. Everyone's satisfied. What about the husband?
Becky says he's causing trouble. Carter waved dismissively. Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. He'll accept a settlement to make it go away. I turned to Davis. Are you recording this? He was already recording the feed on his phone. Every word. I forwarded the security feed access to Agent Perez with a brief message. Currently unfolding. 30 minutes later, our house was surrounded by FBI vehicles. I observed from a distance as agents escorted Carter and Johnson out in handcuffs. My phone rang. Agent Perez. We have them on tape. Discussing the fraud scheme, she stated. Plus, conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempted sale of property under false pretenses. We'll require a formal statement from you. Certainly, I said. And Mr. Miller? Your wife just arrived at the scene. She's distressed. I looked down the street. Sarah was standing on our lawn, hands covering her mouth, watching as FBI agents carried boxes of documents from our house. What happens to her? I asked. That depends, Perez said. On what she knew, and on what you want. I watched Sarah for a long moment. 13 years of marriage. Good years initially. Before whatever this became. I simply want justice. I said finally. The federal case progressed rapidly. Johnson and Carter both accepted plea bargains, implicating each other and several other conspirators in what proved to be a three-state operation targeting military families. Sarah maintained her innocence regarding the larger scheme, claiming Johnson had convinced her I was concealing money, intending to leave her destitute. She claimed the refinance was his idea. She'd merely cooperated. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps not. Regardless, she agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of the stolen funds. Forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension. A signed confession regarding the forgery. In exchange, I didn't press charges. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that email from Helmand. No fault, clean break, all things considered. On the day the final paperwork was signed, I received a call from Agent Perez. Johnson's sentencing occurred today. 8 years for fraud, conspiracy and identity theft. Carter received 12. Thought you'd want to know. Thank you, I said. There's something else, she added. We discovered evidence they've targeted 12 other military families. Your case helped us establish the pattern. Those families might recover their funds because of you. After we disconnected, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment, watching the sunset, reflecting on those other families. Other men who deployed believing their homes and marriages were secure, only to return to emptiness. I hadn't intended to be the one to dismantle Johnson and Carter's operation. I simply wanted what was rightfully mine. But sometimes things unfold unexpectedly. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I never intended for things to end this way. I didn't respond. Oh, there was nothing more to say. A year later I sold the house. I couldn't bear to live there anymore. Too many memories. Too much betrayal within those walls. I used the money to purchase a modest cabin outside of Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms. 10 acres of land. A creek flowing behind it. No neighbors for miles. I took early retirement from the Army. 20 years was sufficient. I'd given enough. I acquired a dog. A German Shepherd named Max. I began undertaking carpentry work for locals. Nothing elaborate, but it kept my hands occupied and paid the bills. My military pension covered the rest. Occasionally I considered Sarah, wondered where she'd ended up. Davis heard she'd relocated to her hometown in Oregon, working at another dental practice. Starting anew, I suppose. I no longer harbored resentment towards her. Frankly, I felt little for her. She'd made her choices, and so had I. One evening I received a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband was in the Navy, deployed when Johnson and Carter attempted their scheme on her. The FBI had provided her with my name as part of the case. You don't know me, she wrote, but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to simply walk away. I reread it twice, then affixed it to my refrigerator. Some days when the silence became overwhelming, or the memories too poignant, I'd glance at that letter and remember that something positive had emerged from it all. Last I heard, Johnson was still incarcerated. Carter as well. The system functioned correctly. For once, as for me, I was navigating my path forward. One quiet day at a time, constructing something new. Something that couldn't be stolen, forged or betrayed. Something that was solely mine.